And just like that, we're back to the one that started it all. That's right, The Mandalorian was the very first major Disney Plus show. Remember that? It seems like forever ago, but it was actually just a couple of years. But that's because they've released just so much content since then. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. I wonder if it'll feel the same when Loki returns later this year. But when it comes to Star Wars content, Andor is a lot more sophisticated than this show, but has a much smaller audience. And this is almost the exact same thing as The Bad Batch. But The Bad Batch is animated, so it also has a much smaller audience. There is just something special about The Mandalorian. And I do believe that it's Grogu. And also, to be fair, I think Pedro Pascal. But you can see, when he's really been allowed to let loose on The Last of Us, that's what's finally catapulted him to star status. But yeah, this is a fantastic show. It's off to a little bit of a slow start, but don't worry. In case you didn't see my tweets earlier this evening, at the very last minute, to coincide with the premiere, which was also at the very last minute, Disney sent out the first 2 episodes to press of The Mandalorian Season 3, which I have now watched. And now you've also watched episode 1, so I'm 1 ahead of you. Don't worry, I took your comments to heart. I am extremely careful. There are no spoilers, even things that you might think are spoilers, because sometimes you guys think things are spoilers when they actually aren't. But don't worry, there's nothing like that for episode 2. But I will tell you that while episode 1 on its own, they really should have released both of them to you as well. I think it would have made for a much stronger start out of the gate. Because it sucks for me to have to tell you, oh, wait until next week. And you're like, why should I have to wait until next week? Well, you do. But anyway, episode 1, because of the short runtime, it's a little underwhelming. I don't think it will be after we go over it. You'll be like, oh, wow, there's a lot here, actually. But it's a little underwhelming. But episode 2 definitely makes up for it. I mean, wow, it's really thrilling, chock full of story, and it has a 42-minute runtime. Thank you very much. These numbers do include end credits, but they're pretty quick on these. They add a lot for, I don't think they have all the dubs. All the dub voices on the press screener. So, that's a pretty good chunk of time. But anyway, it's 42-minute runtime, but it feels even longer. It felt like an hour when I watched it because, again, there's so much story and action jam-packed into episode 2. So next Wednesday, you don't have to, because even though it's so great, there isn't like one word that I think would pop out and trend on Twitter. So I think you'd be okay, but you should try and watch episode 2 as quickly as possible anyway, just so you can bask in its awesomeness. And I think, so just to make sure nothing is spoiled for you. Episode 2, again, no spoilers, but that's an episode you want to watch when it drops or as soon as possible. It's worth watching in the morning before you get on social media. All right, let's talk about episode 1. My little baby Yoda's all grown up, moving around on his own, taking snacks, waving goodbye, and gurgling. That's right, Grogu was clearly on the verge of speaking, and I bet he speaks by the end of this season, if not sooner. Place your bets! When will Grogu speak? And I wonder what he'll say. By the way, Pedro Pascal, I don't know if you saw this, but he was on Graham Norton last week promoting season 3. And when Graham Norton called Grogu Baby Yoda, Pedro Pascal just instinctively, automatically in response also said Baby Yoda. But then Pedro Pascal freaked out. And Graham Norton was like, what's wrong with saying Baby Yoda? And Pedro Pascal, still freaking out, was like, I'm just following the rules, man. So considering how much Pedro Pascal freaked out, like genuine panic, and that cloning was a part of season 1, a big part of the Rise of Skywalker, has returned with a vengeance in the current season of The Bad Batch, my guess, I have not heard this is my guess, I think it's a very educated guess though, and continues to be even more educated, that Grogu is a clone of Yoda, and therefore technically is a baby Yoda. But evolved, right? Because here we see that Grogu is being trained in the ways of the Mandalorian. So he's really becoming a Jedi-Mando hybrid. Can't wait to see that when it finally comes to fruition. That's going to be pretty amazing. But he also, therefore, represents 2 warring tribes coming together, the Jedi and the Mandalorians, who, as of late, haven't really been getting along together. But, Grogu's going to bring those 2 crazy kids together. Speaking of bringing crazy kids together, Bo-Katan and Din Djarin represent opposing Mandalorian clans. And who helped Mando get over his pain? Grogu! Maybe the little guy can do the same for Bo-Katan. And really, Bo-Katan and Din Djarin are a lot alike, haunted by a dead planet, Mandalore. Oh, that's so poetic. I love it. Haunted by a dead planet, Mandalore. It sounds like, I forget the name. The mansion from Rebecca, right? And they talk about that that's a great Alfred Hitchcock film, which I think is only actually available on YouTube from an illegal upload. But anyway, so yes, haunted by a dead planet, Mandalore. Although, maybe it's not so dead. It better not be, because it's Mando's only ticket back into his clan, which I gotta tell you, seems more like a cult. Forget a clan, it's a cult. And if his adopted son, by the way, adopted son/apprentice Grogu, doesn't wear a helmet, yet is still being trained in their ways, how is that not also a violation, which also keeps Din Djarin from being a part of the group? Din Djarin has gone so rogue at this point. I mean, he's like barely Mandalorian. I guess that's why, he's like, hey, I'm doing the helmet thing, right? I'm not sure why it is so important for him to be let back into this group. I'm like, are you going to stick around? They don't seem like they're having a lot of fun. And he took his helmet off more than once, by the way. Who narked on him? He should have. It's like, are you a god? Did you take off your helmet? Heck no. It's a very interesting plot point, which seems to be there for, let's just say, other reasons. But who cares? This is the way. And also, having Din Djarin have his helmet on all the time lessens the similarities with The Last of Us, also starring Pedro Pascal in a very similar role that is airing simultaneously, where he's getting paid a heck of a lot more. And he's getting a heck of a lot more of attention for it than he ever did for The Mandalorian. I don't think it's ideal for these two shows to air at the same time. How did you feel if you're watching The Last of Us? Every time, Din Djarin spoke, I was like, Joel, what are you doing in space in this crazy getup? And then there's been some very funny memes about Grogu versus Ellie. That was great. I love that. You're in my seat. That was a great one. But Disney Plus just couldn't wait anymore to drop new content. I heard that Secret Invasion isn't likely coming until May, and this is their first Star Wars or Marvel show since She-Hulk and Andor, both of which didn't particularly connect with audiences. And I do think Mando continues to be quite the crowd pleaser. It's just got everything. It's because it's all over the place in terms of tone. The tone for the season 3 debut was particularly all over the place. Fraggle Rock meets Terminator, although that was babu frickin' awesome. I love that. I thought that was great. And then when Mando opened fire on that giant alligator, he set his phasers to ooh. I was like, I see entrails exploding in the air. Interesting choice, Lucasfilm. Interesting choice. On that note, watching this episode, I wasn't so sure Mando should be taking care of a small child, even if that's what that small child wanted. Children don't always know what's best for them. Grogu might giggle now and then to let the audiences know, to assure them that he's having a good time, but I was surprised Grogu didn't get shot this episode. I guess the New Republic hasn't set up its child services office just yet. I love them together. They're a great pair, but I honestly was like, this seems unsafe. So let's start at the beginning of one child's journey as a vacuum-sealed Mandalorian. So many questions. How is that helmet vacuum-sealed? We all heard the sound effect, but his hair, that child's hair is still hanging out the back. I was like, that's just a cardboard helmet. And do you get to pick your own colors? Because that kid did not seem like a seafoam green kind of kid. You know what kind of kid that is? That's a Kimmel. That's right, that's Jimmy Kimmel's nephew, who actually played the Tusken Kid, wearing a different sort of mask, interestingly enough, in the Book of Boba Fett. He was actually pretty good. He actually did a pretty good job as that Tusken Kid. I remember that kid. And who I just watched in Your Place or Mine. I was like, I've just seen that kid. That's where I saw him. And he's a pretty darn good actor, because he was very nerdy in that movie, but he kind of had a cool vibe here. He had a cool vibe. His long hair did not work for him in Your Place or Mine. I like the long hair here. I have to say, I think he was way too young to decide to wear a helmet for the rest of his life. Again, where are the New Republic child services? And this rule still makes no sense to me at all. Never remove the helmet? How are little Mandos made? It's a joke I made from season 1. Are they going around wearing just helmets and socks? By the way, if this kid can be baptized in these waters, why can't Mando be? Mando's like, aren't you just baptizing people out there? Why can't I just do that? Why do I got to go to this dead planet that's potentially poisoned? But that's the deal. But maybe it's a good thing, by the way, that Grogu isn't talking just quite yet, because I got the sense that he had a lot of the same questions that I do. Hey, Grogu, can you say trivial and bull? I actually don't like that female Mandalorian. I think, I'm like, why you open my business? All right, so a giant crocodile, that's how, I guess I think I'm a little more Bo-Katan than Din Djarin. So a giant crocodile, I think it's a crocodile. I looked at the difference between alligator and crocodile, and I believe this is a crocodile. So comes out of the water to attack. Mandalorians, crunchy. Although I think in a bad way. I'm like, I don't think that armor digests. And how much is it? I guess it's like maybe eating escargot. Ooh la la. And I wasn't sure why the Mandalorians chose to stand their ground and fight instead of just running inland. I mean, crocodiles can walk on land, but with the mountainous terrain, I think it would have been better. I think it would have been more effective than the stance that they took, especially because they didn't live there. They were just doing their ceremony there. I'd be like, all right, everybody, party's over. I did enjoy helmet cam, though. More helmet cam. Helmet cam is like cowbell. I want more helmet cam. You can see from the concept art that the crocodile was supposed to look a heck of a lot more alien instead of just a giant crocodile with a turtle shell. But I guess the VFX team was pressed for time, as we've been hearing is the situation a lot these days. The render was excellent, though. So good that I felt like I was watching Honey, I Shrunk the Mandalorians. Then again, Mando did a drive-by and didn't just stun that thing or send it running, but literally exploded its underbelly with entrails, again, streaking through the air like confetti. So again, you're like, what kind of tone are you going for here, man? So Mando gets his mission again to bathe in the waters of Mandalore for redemption for daring to take his helmet off. That was a repeat for all of you who didn't watch the Book of Boba Fett. You missed some great stuff, man. At least go watch the last few episodes. Although the Tusken Raider Kid episode was great. And so he and Grogu return to, it's a binge. You've already moved on to Mando. I don't know if you're going to go back. But if you're wondering what happened with Luke Skywalker, you might want to go back. So anyway, so he and Grogu returned to Navarro, and they took the Star Wars equivalent of a red-eye. And as that happened, I was like, A, reminded how bad a sports car is for long-distance travel. Mando was going to have such a crink in the neck. And B, I was very worried that Grogu would use the Force to yank one of those giant creatures into the light speed field, right? And seriously injure it. But luckily for those creatures, Grogu was afraid of them and went to cuddle with Mando instead. Aw, so adorable. Navarro, it's like the artist's renderings when politicians promise to remove all the roads and create a utopia. That never works out. And we've seen in the trailer that Navarro indeed has rough times ahead. It had rough times this very episode, with space pirates right out of Pirates of the Caribbean. Their captain looked like seaweed salad. He actually made me want seaweed salad. Their repurposed destroyer was pretty cool. You can sleep in that thing, no problem. You probably play tennis in it or handball, or what's everybody playing? I forget the name. It's like, I'll put it up there. It's like a big Shrinking. Shrinking had it. They mentioned it because Shrinking's pretty on point. But anyway, clearly I think these pirates were looking for trouble, insisting to be served drinks at the former bar turned school. I'm like, you guys, you're just looking for a fight. Although school was in session for Grogu, who has seen quite a number of standoffs at this point. I was expecting him to join in. I would have loved to have seen one of those blasters almost hit him, and he force-bended it off of himself, but then I think maybe they really would have called child services, or invented it on the spot. So when the pirates try to jump Mando later in the asteroid field, you could see like they were mining the asteroid field. There was one cool shot where you're like, oh, hey, man, is that like another mine? Mines everywhere, because he's, of course, trying to find a mine on Mandalore. But when he was leaving Navarro, he got ambushed. And you could see how well his Naboo fighter could maneuver, and I really like the way it's steered. I think that's really cool. And I love that shot when that explosion lit up that lead jerk pirate's face, too. And the look on his face, oh, that was great. But still, there's nowhere to sleep in that Naboo starship, man. There's nowhere to sleep. Also, I mean, that's what I would be saying at the starship lot. I'd be like, yeah, but where am I going to sleep? Also, how many times have Star Wars characters jumped to light speed to avoid danger? How has something not been invented yet to reliably keep that from happening? I know you can get caught in a tractor beam or whatever, or is that Star Trek? But, you know, it happens a lot. It just happened in Andor. You're like, how many times are they going to do this to us? By the way, pay attention to every lesson that Mando gives Grogu, as I think there's a chance it could come up again. So what did we learn this episode? Never trust a pirate, and how to navigate the stars. All right, so back to Navarro. I love the little droids holding Karga's cape, and when he yanked him down the stairs behind him, they couldn't keep up. That was hilarious. And Karga had a pretty sweet offer for Mando. Be Navarro's new marshal, aka Law and Order. What happened to Cara Dune? Well, it turns out she was recruited by Special Forces, the Lucasfilm equivalent of, she's now at a big farm in the country, kids. And Moff Gideon, we learn, has gone before a New Republic war tribunal for his war crimes. So yeah, this is a sweet offer. A thriving community, a leadership role that Mando is perfectly suited for, a great place to raise Grogu. Did you see they have a school? But like Bo-Katan, Din Djarin is haunted by Mandalore and driven to be with his people and his history. But he wants IG-11 for his mission, a droid he can trust. You know, when Mando said he was going to try and revive IG-11, it suddenly made that statue take on a very different feel. You're like, hey, why didn't anybody else try to revive this droid before just propping him up here? Although the first try did not go very well, that's why. And again, I loved how dark this sequence got. But then they undercut it with some pretty silly kids humor. Now that's using your head, although I know a lot of you watch this with kids. Did any small kids like that joke? Was it worth it for the Grogu-type giggles? Thankfully, Navarro has attracted the best droid mechanics in the galaxy, Anzelians, aka Babu Fricks, who have like a mouse hole in the wall. I thought that was hilarious. Although, where was the loading bay? I was like, how'd you get all that stuff in there? I think they kind of crammed it in there, although I would have loved to seen Mando get in there. I liked seeing him sitting on the floor, but I'm like, did you like what, crawl on your belly to get in here? But that was all pretty cute. Very Fraggle Rock, and Grogu grabbed one of them. I like when the Anzelian said, bad baby. They're like very Eastern European in there. I like that a lot, especially as someone who has Eastern European distant. I've heard stories of relatives of mine who've spoken like that. I wouldn't want an Anzelian. They don't look particularly adorable to me, but I think I would have a hard time resisting picking up a doozer. So adorable. So I know where Grogu was coming from. They're lucky he didn't eat them. They look a little frog-like. So Mando must go in search of a discontinued memory chip to revive IG-11. Too bad Star Wars doesn't have Amazon or eBay. But first he makes a stop in the Mandalore system on the planet Kavala. I believe this is the first time Star Wars has actually ever visited this planet, which is a mix of the coast of England, Ireland, and Vader's fortress. But this is a castle, thank you very much. And Bo-Katan is feeling very Daenerys, with no kingdom and no one left to bend the knee. Yes, without the Darksaber, when she's like, you still got that thing? He's like, yeah, it's right here. I'm not even using it, Bo-Katan. I'm not even using it. She's like, I hate you, Din Djarin. So anyway, without the Darksaber, she lost all of her armies, just as she feared. They've gone off to be mercenaries, pirates. I'm like, there's actually not that big of a difference between you guys, is there? So why can't you guys all just get along? And her dreams of bringing Mandalore back to life are dead. That's okay, Mando doesn't care. He just needs some directions to the mind so he can take his baptismal dip. And Bo-Katan is all too happy to point him in the right direction so she can go back to being alone and miserable just with her droid. End scene. All right, so that's episode 1 of season 3. See, a lot happened. Actually, a lot happened. And just you wait until next week. Oh boy. Try to watch that as soon as possible. We're going to have so much fun talking about that. I jumped several times watching next week's episode. And it was also very funny. And what did you think of episode 1? Do you see the parallels between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin? Should he have taken Karga up on his offer? And how long do you think it'll be before Grogu speaks? And what do you think of having that kid be, already being vacuum sealed? Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.